Today, I want to talk about how we perceive happiness in our lives. And that's usually posed as a very, it's an absolute sort of question, right? It's a 1 or a 0. It's a, are you happy? And on the surface, that makes sense. There's another level to it that I think goes unrecognized. And that is that there are really two ways in which you can be happy. And for the ease of use, I'm going to term them short happiness and long happiness. And the immediate inclination is like, oh man, short happiness is worse, right? Long happiness is better. That's not really what I'm saying. It's a little bit what I'm saying. But to delve into it a little bit, sounding like ChatGPT, short happiness is any sort of experiential happiness that is brought about by the immediacy of your environment. So, if you eat an ice cream cone, right? You have a good tasting food. It's an immediate reward sort of thing. That's why short happiness, right? I do something that I enjoy doing. I play a video game. I eat something good. I go to sleep instead of getting up. Like whatever it is that might bring you short-term happiness, that's short happiness. And then long happiness is more of a general reflective life satisfaction sort of thing, right? So I spend every day eating ice cream, and my short happiness is very high. You know, I enjoy everything that I do, but then I sit down and I'm like 730 pounds, and I'm like, oh, damn, I'm not particularly happy with this, right? I'm upset with where I'm at in my life as a result of my decisions. And that's long happiness. And the two are almost they're almost antipodal, which does not seem like it should be the case, right? It logically feels like, or intuitively feels like, when you do something that should make you happy, it should make you happy. Broadly, it should make you a happier and more fulfilled person. It shouldn't be you either go one way or you go the other, and there's drawbacks to both. I think the reason I'm bringing this up is I think in today's day and age, perhaps in every day and age, there's a whole other video I always make that caveat. The too long didn't read is I hate Juvenoia. I think it's ridiculously, it's a tired narrative that everything new is bad and everything old is good. But that'll be a whole other video. I'm going to write that down as soon as I stop recording. Where the hell was I? Right, in today's day and age, and perhaps in every day and age, it's a lot easier to prioritize short happiness, right? It becomes very difficult to take a wide-reaching overview of long-term goals and long-term solutions, and how do I get to where I want to get to? How do I be happy with the person that I am and the achievements that I have and all of that? When I was younger, I thought this was a very simple question. I thought this was just like, okay, if you ever come to a crossroads and on one fork there is a short-term happiness solution and on the other fork there's a long-term happiness solution, take the fork with the long-term happiness solution. To give an example, it's a school night and I can go out and play football with my friends, or I can stay in and play homework, right? Do the homework. Stay in and do the homework, because that will be short-term. You'll be a lot less satisfied with where you're at, but long-term, it'll bring about, better life satisfaction. It's really not so simple a question, because if we take another thing that I really like doing, if we take this to its endpoint, if we take this as far as it can stretch and we say, all right, every single time that you have any sort of decision as to whether or not you are prioritizing your long-term success and happiness versus your short-term experiential happiness, you just take the long-term, right? You take the long-term option. So every single night you stay in and do homework, and you never have anything that's not like maximally nutritionally beneficial. And I mean, you can come up with 1,000 examples. I certainly can't right now, but you get the idea. Are you going to turn around and be happy? I would argue that you're not. You're going to turn around and be miserable. So there was a conversation I had with my dad probably like almost 10 years ago now. I think I was in high school. I think I was getting towards the end of high school. And I was complaining unjustifiably. And I was saying, man, I'm spending like 20, 25 hours a week working out, going to practices and shit for baseball. And he didn't say this. It was an exploratory question. Like, this wasn't him being antagonistic at all. But he said, I wonder what would happen if you took those hours and you put them towards something that had a higher chance of success, I guess, is what he was trying to say, right? If you studied for those 25 hours. So you didn't work out at all. You didn't go and play baseball at all. You didn't do any of this stuff that you're trying to do to go to college and get a scholarship for athletics, but you turned it into an academic pursuit, right? You read through your textbooks and you did your own extracurricular learning, and you joined clubs and all this crap. And all of the extra time you were putting into your sort of for fun pursuits, you put it into a less for fun but more directed pursuit. And at the time, it kind of made me feel like shit, because I was like, well, it made me feel like I was doing everything wrong, because I was like, well, yeah, now that you put it like that, I would probably be in a really good spot. I would probably be going to Harvard or something if I was studying for 25 extra hours a week. I don't know. I would be going into med school. I have no idea what I'd be doing, but it'd probably be better than what I'm doing now. But it's a question that has clearly stuck with me a little bit, and the more I've thought about it, if I spent 25 hours a week studying instead of doing things that I enjoyed, I wouldn't have made it out of high school. I would have dropped out. I would have quit. I would have broken down. I would have been so dissatisfied with my hour-to-hour, minute-to-minute life that I would have had to change something. So it's not that I was doing something wrong. It's very arguable that I was striking the wrong balance, that I was spending too much time on things I enjoyed and too little time on things that were beneficial to me in a long-term sense. But I wasn't... The answer is not to do everything in a long-term way. You cannot always take the long-term fork in the road. But you also cannot always take the short-term fork in the road, because as an adult, I think everybody recognizes there's a level of systemic unhappiness inherent to being an adult. And I don't know if that's a today thing. I don't know if that's a last 50 years, a last 100 years, or that's just generally part of the human experience. But I think most people will recognize that it's a thing right now. You go out and you ask 1,000 people, I think 400, 500 of them are going to know what you're talking about. That isn't to say everyone's unhappy, but there's a very noticeable undertone of almost exasperation that goes with living your life. I think that is derived almost wholly from life dissatisfaction, and very, very minimally from short-term satisfaction. So it's a swinging scale, right? It's a spectrum. And on one end, you have somebody who always does the short-term thing, and they get nowhere in life, and they are consumed by their desire for immediacy, and as a result of it, they make no overarching progress, right? And on the other hand, you have the workaholic, right? You have somebody who always denies themselves everything in the favor of their long-term progress. Both of those people are unhappy. What I think I'm trying to say is most of us are closer to the short-term person than the long-term person. You want to be right in the middle of the spectrum, right? You want to be, I sometimes do long-term things, and I sometimes do short-term things, and I miss out on some aspects of both, but I get the majority of the benefits of both worlds. I think most of us miss out on the long-term aspects of it, because if there's this sense of deep systemic unhappiness, that doesn't come from I don't get to do short-term things I enjoy enough, right? Nobody cries themselves to sleep because they stubbed their toe, unless they're 4 months old or something like that. Nobody is launching themselves off of a building because they didn't eat enough ice cream cones. This is the part where I don't know if I'm speaking primarily to myself or if I'm commenting on something that's a little bit more general and less specific to me, but I'll comment on it anyways. A strategy that I employ if I find myself to be unhappy, if I find myself to be stressed, if I find myself to be experiencing some sort of negative emotion, is to say, okay, what would solve this? I'm unhappy right now. What would make me happy? I would do this in college a lot, and a lot of the time the answer was if I didn't have work to do, so then I would go and do the work. But the point I'm making is, if I sit here and I say, what would make me happy whenever I do this exercise, the answer is very rarely a short-term thing. It's very rarely like, I just haven't got a chance to breathe lately. I really need to watch some more TikTok shorts about the royal family. I really need to sit down and play more video games. I need to have like a tasty dessert treat, right? That's very rarely the answer, and that can be the answer. Let me be very clear, Obama. That absolutely is valid. Sometimes the answer to the question, what would make me happier right now? What would improve my life? Is not, oh, I need to forge myself into some Adonis of a person, or I need to turn myself into a business mogul. It's just like, I need a snack. That's absolutely the case. What I'm arguing for is that, at least for me, and I suspect for many others, that's rarely the case. And more predominantly, the case is that I'm unhappy. I feel exasperated, to harken back to earlier, or trapped, or in some way dissatisfied, because I'm missing some aspect of long happiness. I'm missing some aspect of who I feel I want to be in the world. I haven't got myself there yet. And I think that can be tremendously motivating for me, maybe for others, because there's a clear divide. If I'm sitting here and I know I'm unhappy, but I haven't thought about it explicitly, and I haven't asked myself the same question, I have no motivation to go out and improve my life. I have no motivation to go work out or go teach myself to code, to go write a book, whatever the case may be. But if I sit down and I think to myself and I properly address the question and I say, I am unhappy, what would make me happy? And I realize engaging in a short-term pursuit, playing a video game, taking a nap, going and having lunch, that won't make me happy. I will be just in the exact same place as I am right now, before doing that and after doing it. But if this problem, for me, to be explicit, for me, I'm working on writing a book, and what would make me happy is if I had the book done. That would be by far the greatest source of long-term happiness that I could garner in my life right now. If I could sit here today and say the book is done, I've written it to the best of my ability. And just posing that question is very motivating to me to actually sit down and write. Because now I'm like, okay, well, that's really the only thing that makes sense for me to do now, because nothing else is going to get me out of this funk, or I don't see any other way that I'm going to get out of this funk. That is the thing that's going to make me happiest, right? So my whole point with all this rambling is pose that question to yourself. And I suspect the answer will be that it's not an issue of short-term happiness that leads to whatever feeling of exasperation you might be feeling. And then once that question is posed, and once you realize that, how do you fix it? Maybe it's that I need to go out and I need to look for a new job. Maybe my job is draining the soul right out of me. And I think you'll find it very motivating to then get on Indeed.com or whatever it is, because it's a very striking realization to see I'm unhappy and this is the way forward. As somebody who's not inherently very motivated, it's a very motivating thing. So in summary, confront your own happiness. Say, am I undershooting? Am I too often engaging in short-term happiness pursuits and leaving my long-term happiness to fall by the wayside? Or am I overshooting? Am I never giving myself time to appreciate small short-term gains and always focusing on driving myself forward in a more overarching, high-level progressive sense? But take a second and really address it and explicitly say, what would fix this? If you are unhappy in any way, or this goes for other things. If you're stressed, if you're sad, if you're angry, what would make you less angry? And I hope that that will give you the same sort of clarity and the same sort of motivation that I find that it gives me. And that is all I have to say on the topic for today. This skewed rather self-helpy, but I hope you'll forgive me for that. Other than that, I will be back tomorrow. I will be back Friday for the last one of the week. And if you watch this and you have anything you want me to talk about or anything you want to talk about, as always, I'll listen. I'll talk about it, probably, depending on what it is, but probably. And that's it for now.